cooled down a bit, yeah? So, yeah, this is the, you've just passed the disagreement phase in this particular talk. Now we come, I think, to the agreement phase. Islamic reform. Okay, I mean, who hasn't heard of Islamic reform? Islamic reform is not something new. We've actually heard this term, the reform of Islam, from the time of Jamaluddin al-Afghani and Muhammad Abdul. So we're talking late 19th century, early 20th century. They first started thinking about Islamic reform. So the question is, why did they start thinking about Islamic reform? Well, at the time, Islam as a civilization was in a quagmire. Now, what does that mean? I mean, look, when Islam first started, it became the empire which lit the world, you know, according to even the opinion of Orientalists. Yet, by the time we reached Afghani and Abdul's time, Islam had become very, very stagnant. So people were thinking about Islamic reform. Some people don't like the word reform. They believe in the word renewal or tajdeed. And the reason for this is because they don't believe Islam needs reform. Now, this all boils down to your definition of Islam. Do you believe that Islam is something physical, real in the world, which is being influenced by historical forces? Or do you believe Islam is a Platonic concept, which is eternal despite human activity? So, that's your definition. Yeah? I mean, to me, Islam is something on the ground. We are the carriers of Islam. Those of us who use the term Muslim, we carry Islam. And we manufacture the perception of Islam. The word reform literally means to form again. I believe in reform even if Islam is still the top civilization in the world. Why? Because I believe we need constant introspection. We need to constantly evaluate ourselves. So, why did Islam need reform to begin with? I mean, would people think of Islam? Would people think of Islamic reformation if Islam didn't need reform? And actually, I don't think they would. I think there was a point when Islam became malformed. Islam actually lost its direction and unfortunately drove itself into the ground. In my opinion, it was during the fall of the Mu'tazila. You see, the Mu'tazila, they were the rationalists of Islam. During their time, works of philosophy were produced. I mean, I've read some of these works, and I must say, I mean, the philosophy in them is incomparable even today. But somewhere along those lines, Muslims started saying, look, philosophy is haram. We can't have philosophy. We need to have the scholars tell us what Islam is. We need to accept it and practice it as they tell us. That is where I believe the decline began. So, Islam, at the moment, people say needs reform. But when we say it needs reform, what does it need reform from? And for me, Islam needs reform from Islamic fundamentalism. Islamic fundamentalism, I mean, when you say Islamic fundamentalists, you listen on the BBC, you're thinking of those guys doing terrible things to people. But I believe Islamic fundamentalism begins up here. It's a mindset. And it's the mindset which says, I am saved, you are not. I'm from the saved sect, you are not. And when you have that mindset, it manifests in your various institutions. For example, Islamic fundamentalists, they believe in the Islamic State, the Dawla Islamiyah. And this Islamic State is designed, or rather they envision it, to become a global superpower, to subjugate other states, just like the colonialist era. That's exactly the kind of thing they want. Another thing, they socially engineer an ummah. Now, it's okay to have an ummah, but when you start saying our ummah is the best and other people are subservient or inferior to our ummah, that's not so good. That's Islamic fundamentalism. Then you have Sharia law. Sharia law is the biggest agency of Islamic fundamentalism there is. It basically states, number one, there is a blasphemy law. What's the blasphemy law? Basically, You start questioning people, you start questioning the scholars, they say, okay, well, that's you, you're finished now. You start saying, okay, well, I disagree with your laws, you're finished. You start saying, okay, well, I think the state needs this instead of your agenda, you're finished. Even democracy is deemed as haram. That is Islamic fundamentalism. To me, Islamic fundamentalism is a hark back to what I call the pre-reformist Christian era. Now, there was a point in European history where the Catholic Church reigned supreme. Okay, I mean, if the Pope said something to a king, like King Henry, for example, yeah? He said to King Henry, I'm sorry, you can't do that. So King Henry had to actually disavow the Pope to do what he wanted. And the reason for that is the power and might of the Pope at the time was simply unassailable. You simply could not question it. That was Catholicism. At the moment, we are in a state of Catholic Islam. I don't mean any insults to the Catholics, any Catholics here, but the word Catholic actually means universal. So when I say we are in a state of Catholic Islam, we are in a state where Islam is seen to be homogeneous, to have one central authority. Okay, let's take, for example, some bombing was perpetrated somewhere. They'll go and ask the Catholic Islamic authorities what the opinion is on this matter. And those guys will inevitably say, oh, it's just. They will not ask the dissenting opinions. And that is where the problem lies. If you look at any book, for example, Islam for beginners, or Islam for dummies, or Islam for idiots, or something like that, have a read of it. Do they have any kind of opinions which resemble the sentiments of most people here today? Generally not. Generally they don't. They have opinions which are towards the fundamentalist streak of Islam. Not fully fundamentalist, mind you, but still somewhat towards that, we are the best and you are not kind of mentality. And I think this is really unfortunate because Islam is full of diversity. I mean, here in the last 2-3 hours, you've seen a diverse set of opinions. But right now, you're going to see that we don't disagree on what is Islamic reform all that much. So, what am I calling for? I'm trying to cut it as short as possible to give you guys time to discuss. I am calling for a Protestant Islam. Now, again, let's not confuse the use of the terms. A protest, the etymology of the word protest means a public testimonial of one's disagreement to a particular subject. And that is what we need. We need a Protestant Islam. We need to be able to sit in the same room, each of us give a different opinion, not get heated up about it too much, and be able to say, okay, well, at the end of the day, we still want to fight for human rights, for humanity to progress, and for us to move forward into the next era. And I do believe that Protestant Islam can do this. I do believe that if human beings got together, we united on what we do agree on. Usually it's not theology or scripture, but it is on basic values. If we do agree on those basic values, we need to create that space. As the moderator introduced, I'm from the Quranists Network, and in the Quranists Network, we don't have a set interpretation. Actually, there are people in the Quranists Network who do believe in a code. So we don't have a problem with that. What we want is for people to get together with a hub, with a hub of ideas in mind. So they exchange their ideas and they will become all the better for it. And I do believe Islam as a whole should have the same mindset. We need to put forward that Muslims are a diverse set of individuals. We accept all manner of opinions, and we do not accept that some central authority speaks in our name. Thank you very much.
Thank you.